very excited to get back into a work week. Last week we maximized it from a staff standpoint, just really just recruiting on the front end of the week, player development during the middle of the week. Got some of our ones some valuable time kind of just getting recovery. Nobody was really obviously out of it. You guys know our player health standpoint, so we're really excited to get those guys a little bit of rest. Worked a lot of our twos, a lot of our Devo guys. Was able to get out on the back end of the week and maximize on some recruiting opportunities. A big week in our program. You saw last week, I know we talked about national awards and recognition, and then received word today. It's going to get announced here in about 20 minutes, I think, that Spoon has been nominated for one of 12 finalists for the Thorpe Award, which is a huge award. And to have that small of a list right now is actually pretty big accomplishment for a guy that I think preseason probably didn't have a lot of preseason hype, but based off the work and production and the way we're playing, another great indicator of a lot of good things going on in our building. So we'll turn our attention, and really did about midweek last week because Nebraska had a bye week. Allowed us really to get done that same day that we got done, knowing there wasn't going to be any more film added. So we were able to jump into Nebraska last week. But to be noted, obviously a team that's been 2-2 since transition. I think Coach Joseph, because he played there, he definitely had a huge impact on kind of just what's happened since that transition. I noticed a difference on offense, defense, and really even on special teams, the way they're playing the game, the way they're, especially at home, which we're going into. They were able to beat an Indiana team by 2 scores, something we weren't able to do. So a very talented football team, got a lot of athletic ability on the perimeter, on both offense, defense. They got big guys up front that play physical Big Ten football. So a tremendous challenge for us, and I think they're, coming out of a bye week, they did very well in that Indiana game. So all the key ingredients for us to be ready to play a really good game on Saturday. Excited for the opportunity. So go ahead.
No game over the weekend, but did you feel like this weekend was a big win for Illinois football, given the landscape of how the Big Ten West played out? I get the question, I understand the point, but really we just worry about Nebraska. I think outside world always pays attention. Not to say as a head coach you don't look at things as they lay. We literally started Sunday's meeting just as we would any other game or any other week. Just look at the world of college football around you. It's fun to be in that position. A year ago I didn't really do in that, but we started doing that this year even before we really became someone that got talked about, because I wanted them to understand what was coming.
Right, I talked to Barry about the relationship with him and Tommy. He said it was an arranged marriage that's worked out pretty well. What did you see?
Great way to phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a different dynamic. Usually it's OC bringing a quarterback, but it was obviously different timing. How have you seen them? Why does the partnership work for them?
Well, I think you guys know me well enough by now to know that probably there was a lot more thought in it than the outside world, right? At some point I knew transition was going to happen, and at that point I also probably knew the direction that I was strongly leaning. There was a reason that we kind of recruited the way we did in December and put things in place. I give a lot of credit to Tommy to being open to it, because really at the time there were some people flirting with him that could have been options that maybe looked a little sexier, a little better at that time, and he just stayed the course with us. I think his dad was a tremendous impact. His mom and dad both, I think he relies on them quite a bit, and when I went in there I think they realized the sincerity and the honesty and the approach and what I thought we could deliver. So there's just a lot of positives that I think showed faith, Tommy and us, before it was real, which I think is why now when things begin to happen, it's probably ingrained that even more. And to be quite honest, when there was a bump in the road, his faith, his trust, like all of his comments that he keeps saying to you guys were, I know what we're doing, I know how it's working. He works with Barry on a daily basis and those other guys around him. So, a lot of positives.
Why did you think it would work with Barry?
Did I think it would work with Barry? I did. Barry, as you guys have gotten to know, is very sarcastic, dry, a very unique personality. I think even our staff took a while to kind of get used to this guy that's pretty guided in his approach. I don't know how much we've mic'd him up, but he really is a very funny person, and very. He also, brings back a lot of things on him, which I think is an awesome thing to do. And his wife Janelle would be the first to point out that she has a tremendous influence on him and the things he does on a daily basis. So I'm not surprised. I've been around Barry before. I've made this comment several times. I named him the punt team coordinator back in the day because I knew he had a coordinator voice, and I wanted to see it, and I want to help build it. And then obviously what you see today is a byproduct of that.
Coach, with the success you've had on the field, is the recruiting operation kind of operating in a different space now?
Well, twofold. So when we entered the season, we knew we had somewhere 14 to 16 guys that were for sure going to be done, right? There's a couple guys out there that are in that Poucho to Marquez world that, could or could not materialize, but we knew that we were looking at a number of 15 guys, probably to 16, that were going to be out of the program, right? Then we got another list of probably 13 guys that, have the opportunity to play another year. We have a certain number of guys that are playing extremely well that may have the opportunity to play in the NFL quicker than maybe others had expected. So because of that, that's opened up the door that we're probably going to have a few more roster spots than we were normally planning on. So that's opened up a few more doors, and then just our popularity, definitely. It's not out of the realm of possibility to say that, kids have seen us, what we've been able to do. I know in particular when you call a kid on the phone that maybe a year ago there was lukewarm interest, and now it's like, Coach, I watched you guys. Coach, I saw this. Coach, I seen this, right? I saw what award that guys are nominated for, and those all definitely step in the right direction.
Because maybe you got a head start on Nebraska some last week, can you do more like this week during maybe a typical game week because you laid the foundation?
You mean more in our game plan?
Yeah, just maybe go deeper on
something. I think there's always a guarded thing in my mind that, just because you have more time doesn't need more volume, right? I think we play well when, case in point, Ryan, right? I've made that point several times. His call sheet's not huge, right? He does what we do very, very well. We do it very fast, and we play with physicality. I think offensively that's definitely carried forward as well. So we'll definitely have a little bit more preparation and game plan time, but I'm not saying it's going to necessarily increase the volume of what you might see.
I guess I know last week you kind of said got Black Home, you just gave them a little time where they weren't on the field.
What's that?
The Minnesota week, you said.
Yeah.
It took a little less time on the field.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Just time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, how did that help? I mean, how did they respond? Do you keep doing that?
Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt that we played our last 3 games, the fourth quarter, as strong or better than our opponent. I don't think that anybody can look at the Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota game and not say that, for us to play at a higher level in the second half was very obvious. And I just want to make sure that we contain that going into that bye week. And then the bye week, we did certain things. Even though we may not be on the field practicing, they were definitely involved with Tank and his crew. We were very conscientious about spiking their heart rate, keeping their conditioning value. Thursday was last Thursday was very much like a Tuesday of game week for us, just our approach. What that means is early down value, things that we did, was all Nebraska. And then Friday they got an extended workout, which they don't normally get with our game week because obviously we're playing on Saturday. And then yesterday we were able to throw at them another 15 period practice that is before we even get into a normal game week on Tuesday. So we definitely gotten in good work. I think for us, we recognize that for me as a head coach, we have Nebraska, but then we have a 4-game, 2 home, 2 away that we have to be at our best in every one of those, but also understand that there's a steady crescendo to the end of it, right? And if there's one thing our kids, I think, if you ask them what they have faith in is anything I put in front of them from a scheduling standpoint, they just buy into it without question and go out and do what we ask them to do.
Brett, what are you getting out of your transfer guards, your 2 transfer guards that you've got that made this thing go? And
Great question.
Are they at the point where you thought they'd be as first-year players?
2 different guys, right? For instance, Isaiah came in light and bulked up 15-20. Zai came in a little heavy and trimmed down 15-20. Isaiah obviously is probably, just from a pure, if you're looking at numbers, contributed a lot more snaps at 2 positions. He's played left guard and left tackle. But Zai is playing his best football by far in the last couple games. I would say after the 3rd or 4th game, I kind of had a conversation with him and said, hey, all right, we're in the honeymoon phase is behind us, right? I need you to play a little physicality. I play with a little bit better pad level. Take that step that I think he's ready to make, and he did it, right? And to be quite honest, Zai comes from an environment really small, high school football in Mississippi. Played at a junior college, and probably in his mind he even played that last game of junior college football thinking he was going to be back at Mississippi Gulf Coast for another year. And then we found a way to appeal to the NCAA and get him eligible, and now all of a sudden he's in this environment where he's in a Big Ten environment, and then he's all of a sudden running with a 2 deep, and all of a sudden he becomes a starter, and there's a lot of things that have been thrown at him. He's probably one of the more enjoyable kids. We heavily involve him in some of our recruiting. use him as kind of a spokesman about what we can do and what we can be. But the good thing about Zai, I think in particular, is his best end is in front of him, really, really high level. Isaiah, to be quite honest, he's drawn the attention of not only the people we play against, but from the outside world too. Like he's a very big, athletic, balanced, good intensity. He has a good punch. Really does well during the course of the game to adjust to his opponent. So both those guys are really good examples. And to be quite honest, to your point about recruiting, we discovered both of those guys during our bye weeks 1 and 2 last year. Isaiah in bye week 1 and Zion in bye week 2, and that has a huge impact on our program right now.
Barry said he came out with spring feeling comfortable with the offensive line and where it was going. But did you think there was going to, just because of new phases,
yeah,
do you think it was going to take a little bit of time to fully kind of hit that stride?
I knew we hadn't maximized what we could be, but I definitely felt that we were trending in the right direction. I at that point, we either right when we got done with spring ball, however laid out, obviously Doug and V got drafted, right? And I think it's I used to say it to people would come to our program and they like regular visitors, football people, right? And they'd be like, wow, you look different. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, your O-line, D-line just look a lot different, right? And I knew what they're saying, but I kind of wanted to grasp because I respect them. What are you saying? And I could tell right away from the outside observer that like we were different at the offensive line, and then especially our defensive coaches talked about during spring drill about how different and competitive the drills have become with our offensive line, inside drill, one-on-ones. And I thought it was, for me as a coach that just went 5 and 7, for me to say we had 2 linemen get drafted and thought we could improve, like that was to me like I was kind of talking a little bit of gibberish in my own head, right? But I knew I saw what I saw. And then when we got into fall camp, when Julian Pearl went through an entire summer, when Palcho reshaped his body, when Pilstrom continued to grow at the center position, and then really the 3 guards, I bring it up all the time. Jordan Slaughter's value is worth its weight in gold. He's the best 6 man in football or basketball that I've ever seen, right? So like he really brings a lot of really good value that allows us to sub in Zai a little bit, and as well as other positions. So yeah, I could see a trend in that way. I've seen this rodeo before. I just needed to see it firsthand.
Some of the television commentators were remarking how consistent your team has played. How much have they played like they've practiced?
Good point. We say, I've said this, I told this to my staff the first time we ever got together, and I've said it to our players, right? One of the greatest values you can bring to an organization is consistency, right? Like when I interviewed with Josh, I talked about, hey, one of the things we're going to do is we're consistently going to prepare every day to get better, right? Like as a head coach, when I hire assistants, I often say the best value you can bring me is consistency, because if you are consistently good in one thing, I can work that. But if you're consistently not good in some area, I know how to compensate that, right? Or I know how to drive you to be better. So sometimes consistency is two-edged, right? Everybody wants it to be great, but also you can protect the things that you don't do well, right? And that's probably the key that offensively, defensively, and special teams, our coaches have done a really good job. We're maximizing and being consistent in things we do well, and we're persistently trying to stay away from the things we don't do well, because those will get better with time. And then I literally just had this conversation with our team during the bye week, right? Everybody, and I showed examples of media and opposing coaches, people that we play against. I put media quotes from our opponents all the time up to our team, because that's the greatest indicator of what people think of you. And one of the things I said is, consistency is a really great thing when you talk about success, but it has an evil cousin called complacency that can bring you failure, right? And that's the driving edge right now, is to keep complacency out of our business, out of our building, offensively, defensively, special teams, and especially the coaching staff as well.
What does Josh McRae add to the offense that maybe you didn't have before without him?
Well, Josh is just another quality back, right? And I'm not, implying that we didn't. Chase Hayden and obviously Reggie have done a really good job, but we kind of got the double whammy there last week. Both those guys they had prepped all along as our number 2 and number 3, and we lost them very quickly in that game. Reggie went out in the first quarter, and then Chase had a contusion on his hand that limited his ability to grip. So both those guys are cleared now, but it really quickly turned on us in that game. So to have him, hopefully in the value of what he brings this week, but also, Aiden Lawfrey probably just had one of his better weeks of practice as well. So I'm excited to see where that running back room goes.
When you said people come in and say you look different on the line, what do they mean? Like, is it physicality, confidence, scheme? Like,
Probably the big three: size, ability, and results. Right? Like we definitely got. It's not a shock, right? Zion and Isaiah are considerably bigger than our guards from a year ago. I think it was right here, right when you guys started a little propaganda campaign. What I said about our offensive line, right? Like there was really. It was just stating the obvious, right? Like I think we needed to have length and size, and to quickly put it two guards that come in at 6'4" plus. They have 6'7" length. They have great lead and power in their lower body, and it just changes the dynamic of the room. Pouchel and Pearl have been here, right? But I thought those guys could be anchors on the outside edge. I thought we could have some value inside, and now some of those other guys are really starting to bring it along as well.
You mentioned people outside showing interest in your guys. Is that the good problem you want to have in your program when the NFL?
It's a great problem. I think one of the advantages that I didn't really think about when I had it rolling at Wisco, we went to Wisconsin, Arkansas, and obviously didn't have success my first year, but went to 3 straight bowl games. One of the things that I kind of evaluated after my tenure there was, I lost 3 guys to the draft a year earlier than I thought. And when you start talking about a roster that has good players, right, you expect those good players to finish, right? Or I understand leaving early for a second round or a first round grade, but had some guys leave that didn't leave in that capacity. And then now you're shorthanded, now you're expecting one of your best players to be coming back at a position that he's no longer there at. And that has an effect on your team, and you can't replace that. And then my last year at Arkansas, I lost 1 at tackle, 1 at running back, and 1 at tight end, and that hurts your offense in a very big way. So I've been better prepared for that moment, to be quite honest. This last week I probably went through our roster management, myself and Pat Embleton, and then last night with our staff for 2 hours about not just what we have on our roster right now, but what we project to have, and if we don't have those same projections, what our course of action is. We're just a much better prepared organization.
Coach, what's been your experience coaching in Lincoln? I mean, obviously you coached against this team quite a bit. What makes it a difficult place to play?
Yeah, so my first experience, I was an assistant at Iowa. We had a home and home series against Nebraska back in the day before there was ever, this new conference realignment. It was strictly just a home and home against a Nebraska opponent, and I remember going over there and getting the cheers running on the field, right, and then they cheered louder when you left because you lost. But then my next experience, I was at Nebraska. I was at Kansas State, and we went there, and we actually had success and won there. And I think it was the first time Kansas State had been to the Lincoln and beat them there, and it was like 30, 40 years, whatever it was. And then the next year they came to our place, and we did it again, right? So I really enjoyed the tenacity of the environment we played in, and then actually that was the last time I was there because we didn't play them during my tenure at Wisconsin at their place. So it's a great environment, very comparable in my mind. It's kind of like some of your Big Ten venues. It's a very vertical stadium, a lot of people, very interactive crowd, and one that I'm excited to let our guys play.
One more about Josh. Did you expect a snap count for him on Saturday? Or
When we were coming back from this, we've been very guided about how much we've let him do and where we're at. We practiced a little bit yesterday, but a lot of what we see on Saturday will be a byproduct of what we see today, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday to get to Saturday.
You expect him available?
I do, but it's not a guarantee right now.
You mentioned last week that getting some Devo practices was good for you during the bye week. That when bowl practices start, that'd be another opportunity. Is that something that you or someone on your staff has started scheduling already, since you've got it?
Yeah. So I know what the rule is, right? What we don't know right now is when our season will end and when our bowl game will come into play. So I know it's coming. I just know what the ratio would be, and then for us, a little bit has to also be around academic schedule, right? So you got finals week that's included in that. Sometimes underclassmen's volume of academic requirements is a little bit more significant than upperclassmen who have less classes. So it's really a work in progress. The other person needs to know what it's me, and I got it. But last week was a good taste, and then it was kind of awesome for me. I had a former player of mine that I literally but I asked him to move during bowl game Devo practices, and Chris Maragos was a kid that was a wide receiver for us. I moved him to DB. He didn't necessarily want to see it or hear about it, but he played, I believe, 9 years in the NFL, was a two-time Super Bowl champion, captain of the Philadelphia Eagles, and he's kind of got the itch to possibly get into coaching, so I had him come in and kind of just hang out and observe us for a week, and he could tell them firsthand, you know, how valuable those Devo practices are and what it meant to his career, so it was really good.
All good?